just go to the English, original audio English. So you will be able to hear me and not them. And also Benny will just zoom me so you will not be able to see yourself while you're talking. And this is an amazing opportunity to thank Lila, which is not here today because she's working very hard those days for supporting everything to being able to this Zoom to happen, to this session of teachings to happen. And also she said that she brought up today the recording, some of the recording that were not she wasn't able to put it before. So also we want to thank her for that. And I also want to thank the translators. Edith here is doing the Hebrew translation and Ola is doing the Russian translation, which is so nice that we have those two languages in addition to the English one. So thank you, Ola, and thank you, Edith, for supporting the Dharma. And yes, today is our last class in this series. So I just want, again, to give you the broad view of what we're going to do. So it's diving into Vajrayana. We were covering the origins of Tantra. What is Tantra? What are the different classes of Tantra? What are the tools of Tantra? And we could have more of, I will say, introduction to Tantra, okay? Although it's not introduction to a specific tool or to a specific practice, but it was more of a broad view for Tantra. Our next series of teachings will be on the psychology of Tantra. I'm not sure yet when I'm going to do that. Some of you were requesting that I will do some teaching about the talk, the Gana Puja. So I'm thinking maybe it's going to be next week or maybe the following week. I have to see because I need to see what are the best dates because we want to do also Gana Chakra. We want to do the talk, the puja together. So I want, to have it in auspicious days. So we'll be able to not only study about that, but more of being able to practice that and to participate in a nice feast, I will say. It's not feast, it's not only the food and the drink, it's more of a mind feast. And then I'm going to a long break after, within a couple of weeks, I'm going to a long break because I'm going to join La Melina in Europe. So I'll be back only by the last week of August. So I'm not sure yet when the teaching will be starting. So we'll see. But I think you have enough to cover. So before we want to dive, I prepared a very special teachings for today. I thought about what is the most common question that I have here. So I want to give you some answer about that. You'll have to be patient because it's going to be in a few minutes. I will tell you what it is. And for now, we're going to do the Guru Yoga lineage and refuge and bodhicitta prayer together. Maybe before that, I want to give an offering to my lamas. It's not just mentioning all those lamas and lineages that I've been practicing, but also to give them some offering, which is usually done by, the term is giving a mandala. It's a mandala offering. And if you don't know what is the mandala offering, actually, this is a tantric practice to give the mandala. Mandala, we have a mudra. Mudra is a gesture in your hand, it can be in the body, but usually it's in the hands. So what you do is you do the mudra of holding those pinkies here, holding them together like this, having those two ring fingers up, and then having those two fingers here like that. And actually, if you go over the mandala prayers, do you see that? No. Oh, you see that? Okay. So when you go over that, what you see is the two ring fingers that up are the main, the central channel, and the others are different channels, and those four are the four continents. So actually, when we give the mandala to our teachers or to the lineage or to whomever you want to give it to, actually what you do is you give them your practice, you give them your Vajrabhati, you give them the working that you're doing within the channels, the lung, the prana, and the tigles that are running within those channels. So it's not just, okay, just do something with your hands and then say some words. There is a very deep teaching with regard to the mandala offering, and I just gave you a brief teaching about that, very brief teaching. So when you give this to your teachers, what you do is you give them your outmost open up practice that you want to give them, wherever you are at your practice, okay? And usually you do that in Tibetan. So I'll do that in Tibetan, and then if you know, you can join me. And if you don't, so just listen and think about your practice, what you want to give as an offering to your teacher or teachers in the past, in the present, or maybe in the future. Sashi puki jukshin metok drum, rira blingshin ingdegem padi, sange shingdu mikte wage, dokum namdak shingla chopashok. Om idam guru ratna mandalakam niryatayami. So that's the way we do the mandala offering. We give the whole world. The world is our body with the channels, with everything. So we'll go to the traditional lineage prayer with Lamalina, like we do with Lamalina. Chöku'i kundu zango bagombo doje sempagirab doje dang. Shere shingi badu shinglabde, dedang matsung tata tsushum chi. Tsokchen chupelamala sorwa. Ogen pema junela sorwa. Doje chang che chilo narodang. Ma pa mila gompo tsatsapa. Na pupadang palden grupa sok. Kagiula manamla sowa. Geluk namanamla sowa. Doikung lamanamla sowa. Lamalina namanamla sorwa ahade. Pakundu zong dang yerme pa gong gerab doje shing tak pa jeti tang nisume pa palamanum cheten chong. Okay. So, as you remember, last week we were going over in very short, very briefly, we went over the tools in Tantra. And what I did, the most brief one, was the 6 yogas of Naropa. And sometimes it's called in Tantra, it's called the completion stages practices. So I was thinking about going over those 6 yogas. I'm not going to teach the practices themselves. I'm just going to give you a brief summary of the 6 yogas of Naropa. And I hope that we'll have time, because I made something which is very interesting to see the comparison between the 6 yogas of Naropa, which are the completion stages practices, and the Dzogchen practices, okay? Because I know many people have a lot of questions about that, because we don't know. So I want to give you the map, okay? It's some kind of a map. So we'll see. I hope we'll have time for that. Before I want to go over the 6 yogas of Naropa, I just want to give you a brief of how I got it, because it's very important. Usually you're not allowed to speak about it unless you have received this transmission and lung, and also permission from your teachers to teach that. So first time I've studied the 6 yogas of Naropa was in 2011 with one of my lamas, Lama Glenn Mulin. Some of you already know, because Lama Lena and myself, we introduced some of his teachings to the Sangha. So some of you are practicing with him, which I'm very happy. One of his favorite subjects is the 6 yogas of Naropa, the completion stages practices. Of course, he practiced a lot of other sadhanas and generation stages, and he gives a lot of empowerment, but that's his, I will say, favorite, okay? And there is a reason, and I hope that by the end of this class, you will find out why this is his favorite practices and teachings. He has 2 books about that, okay? One of them is the practice of the 6 yogas of Naropa. You can, of course, purchase that via Amazon or elsewhere. And the other one is the 6 yogas of Naropa, which is more of historical. A few months ago, Lama Glenn was accepting our invitation to come to teach in Israel. He did a retreat of the 6 yogas of Naropa and also gave us a lot of empowerment and practices. So for these special occasions, a friend of mine and myself, we have translated to Hebrew the 6 yogas, most of the book of the 6 yogas of Naropa. So we have it here. We made, because it was a very short time, so we didn't have the time to conclude that. We hope that we will be doing that for his next visit in the future. So that was the first time I have received that from Lama Glenn. I also received I had the opportunity to have something very unique. I went to the 6 yogas, I would say, retreat in England in one of the Gaelic traditions in FPMT. And I had the opportunity to be in 2 weeks retreat, that each day we have received a recording from Lama Yeshe about this practice. Also, we practiced that with Lama Paula Chichester, which is, again, one of my lamas, and I hope that in one of the days we will also bring her to this audience. She is amazing. And that was something very special, because it was in, I think, 2018, I guess. I'm not sure about the dates. And to see Lama Yeshe and to be in this environment, in the retreat, and to receive these teachings and practices, and to practice with him during the time that we were there, was something very unique. So also, if you're interested in practicing or studying that in more depth, so there is the book of Lama Yeshe, which is The Bliss of Inner Fire. I'm sure that by now it's in a different cover, and I think the name is a little bit different, but it's still The Bliss of Inner Fire by Lama Yeshe, so you can also purchase that. But, and here is the warning, in order to practice or to study or to receive the information about the practices themselves, not about the general information, about the practices themselves of the 6 yogas of Naropa, starting with the tumo, the inner fire, you have to practice for some period of time, I'm not saying how long, the generation stage. Remember, we have this generation stage in Tantra, which is you learn how to generate yourself as the deity, as the archetype that you're practicing. And then when you have enough clarity about those practices, because there are many practices within the generation stage, then you can proceed to the 6 yogas of Naropa. So what is the purpose of the 6 yogas of Naropa? In the end of the day, you know, it's not linear. It's more of, I will say, according to your capacity. If you have the capacity to understand and to start doing those practices, of course, your karma will bring it to you. So all of a sudden, you will have a teacher inside your house or in your country or in the Zoom, and you will receive this information from him or from her. But I've seen too many students who were jumping into the completion stages practices without having enough infrastructure with the generation stage. And like Lamalina likes to say, they did themselves some mischief. So something happened, okay? Because the purpose of doing the completion stage practices is basically to I will say, to be able to create the environment and the capacity to jump into the clear light mind, or in Dzogchen we call it trekcho, or to go behind that. So actually it's going to enlightenment, right? So those are very advanced Tibetan Buddhist tantric practices, okay? And it has been passed through the Kagyu lineage, and they were compiled by the Indian Mahasiddha Naropa, and then transmitted to his student Marpa, and from Marpa to Gampopa and to other lineages. We know them here in the West now more in the Gelug tradition, because the Gelug tradition, after Tsongkhapa made some kind of clearing up all those practices, Tsongkhapa brought them into the Gelug tradition. You know that the Gelug tradition is based upon Tsongkhapa's teachings. And I think they're carrying them in the most accurate way that they were given by Naropa, okay? There are some equivalent practices that more of known as the 6 yogas of Niguma, which I'm not going to go into it. Niguma considered to be Naropa's sister. Sometimes she calls consort, sometimes she called spouse, or whatever she was for him. There is a little difference between them. So we're not going to do the comparison between them today. So we'll just go over those practices, okay? Which again, they are considered to be a very profound system in order to accelerate I will say, the spiritual development, and then through those practices to achieve enlightenment or liberation, okay? So the first one is known as Tumo. Tumo is the inner heat yoga or inner heat practices. And what it involves, it's generating inner heat. And the system and the method to do that is working with some visualizations. There are different visualization that you're going through that. And then combine that with breath retention, what's known as the vase breathing, some kind of techniques with that. And when you do that in a specific manner, it's a buildup, okay? It's a block on a block. Then you find out that your subtle body dissolve and you find the inner heat that can generate a lot of bliss and mental, and it dissolves the mental blockages or the energetic blockages that we have in our channels. So basically, this is the infrastructure, the basic platform to work towards all other 5 yogas of Naropa. So the Tumo is the first one. And some people think that if they go to, I don't know, a workshop or even a retreat of 5, 6, 10 days and to learn the Tumo, so they can jump over to those 5 more practices. You don't need all 5 of them. We'll find out very soon why we don't need all 5 of them. But people think that, you know, I've been in this practice, I've been in this retreat, I know how to practice that, and that's it. I can tell you from my experience, I'm not sure how many years, but in a solitary retreats and putting a lot of emphasis on that, it took many years in order to accomplish I will say, the signs of Tumo, okay? Inner heat is not the sign, okay? Although this is the name of the practice, inner heat is not the sign. Very easy, relatively. You can achieve the inner heat if you know how to do that, especially if you know how to do the vast breathing, and then, you know, working with the energies. But in order to receive I will say, the formal signs, I'm not going to go over those formal signs. It takes years of practices. And I'm not talking years of practicing of doing 15 minutes a day. I'm talking about very elaborated practices. I'm not sure if you know, but in some lineages, in the Nyingma lineage, actually, no, sorry, in the Drikung Kagyu lineage, actually, when you study the 6 yogas of Naropa, usually you do that in the form of the 3 years retreat. Then you practice that in a specific manner for a specific period of time. And then the first sign, by the way, it's external sign. It's not the internal sign that we're looking for. The external sign that you have achieved a specific level, there's still to go, but a specific level is that you're going out in the winter, not the tropic winter. I'm talking about the Tibetan winter, very high level attitudes, where it's snowing and it's freezing there. You're going naked and you have your shawl, your zen. Usually it's a white zen because that's represent the Tumo achievement. You dip it in a water, in a barrel of water, and then you go, you wrap yourself with this. You sit in the snow, on the floor, no cushion, nothing. And then you do the practice. And if you have achieved the basic level of generating the inner heat, what will happen is that your body will rise up in the temperature, and then the sheet or the zen will be dried up because of the heat of your body. So if you have achieved that, so you are qualified to go to the next level of Tumo. You're not yet qualified to go to the next levels of other practices. Nowadays, maybe, I don't know, maybe because of the degenerating time, I don't know, most of the teachers who are teaching the 6 yogas of Naropa in general, and specific the Tumo, Lama Glen is one of them, but there are others that I have received also the teachings from them. They're not doing this, I will say, exam, okay? Lamelina always says that she was doing the practice, she was practicing that, but she never, because she completed the practice during the summer, she never went to do this exam because there was no winter. So she doesn't consider herself as qualified to teach the Tumo, although she practiced that. And usually she is sending people to others in order to do that. It's not the only reason although she says this is, she was not doing the final exam, but there are other reasons. Because in order to master in the inner heat practices, the Tumo inner heat practices, because there are many practices, it's not only one practice, you have to make it your main practice for many, many, many years. And as she says, she prefers the Dzogchen. So after completing the practices she was doing for a few, I don't know if it was a year or something, she has decided she wants to go in another direction. When I was in Amsterdam 2 years ago, she authorized me to teach Tumo. And there are some students that I taught them. I do it only private. I don't do it online. I don't do it with recording. And I prefer personally, although I practice this for many years, I prefer personally to direct people to those teachers who have mastered that and are still practicing that, like my Lama Glenn Mullin and his Drupon Changwala, and also to Drupon Rinchen Rinpoche, one of my teachers. They're both mastering in those 6 yogas of Naropa. I'm now moving into a different direction according to my Lama instructions, but if you have question with that and you think that it's okay, and Lama Lina will give me the authorization to give you specific, because it's specific people that she instructed me to give them those teachings, I would love to do that. So just for you to know. So as I said, Tumo is very much the basic, okay? If you're not about to practice the 6 yogas of Naropa in the lineage of the completion stage practices after the generation stages practices, so there is no use to go towards the other practices, okay? So we'll just go over those practices because the body will not be ready, okay? So we'll go over those practices, just that we know. But again, if you have practiced Tumo for many years, go ahead. If not, you can have the teachings. You can have something in general, but it's not the specific practices. Those practices will be brought to you by the teacher in a very... The teacher needs to know what are the inner signs. You will not find them in the books, and usually the teacher will not tell you, look for those signs. You will have to tell them that you had those signs, and they will know where you are, okay? So the Tumo, as I said, the results of this practice is to open all those subtle energy channels. It creates a blissful experiences, what we call in Dzogchen Yam, but they're very good experience, and we need them on our path, okay? And as I said before, it's a basic that supports the other yogas of the Naropas that we'll talk about. The obstacles that might happen if you practice it in a wrong manner, it's if you have the improper technique, maybe you don't follow the instructor, maybe you just read the book. You don't do it by reading the book. You have to receive it from a live teacher, okay? Either via Zoom or live in person. Otherwise, it can lead to physical imbalance. I've seen students that had physical imbalance, okay? It can also be emotional agitations, you know, what we call the lung disorder or the lung illness, or even some kind of delusion. People have this and they think that they're enlightened, okay? So they're going around declaring that they are enlightened because they have been able to generate the inner heat to reach some blissful experiences. Blissful experiences are nice, but they are not, you're not enlightened while you have them, okay? So let's assume that you have practiced Tumu for many years. You were very diligent about that. You did it very thoroughly. You didn't do it only 15 minutes a day. You had to practice it very thoroughly, okay? So when you have achieved a certain level, then the next practice in the 6 yogas of Naropa is the illusory body yoga. Now, the illusory body yoga, actually, it's not something that, I mean, we're going to have practices in order to develop our mental issue about that, but actually we are carrying the illusory body all the time. The illusory body is the body of the channels and the drops and the lung and or prana, but we are not aware. We are not going around in the world as being a Vajra body or illusory body. So the characteristic of that practice is to develop an understanding. It first starts with understanding that all phenomena are like a dream, or it's a kind of illusion, okay? So the practitioner trains to see all experiences and insubstantial or empty, okay? So if you're familiar with other Dzogchen practices, you can catch up now. Where are we in other practices like the working with perception, right? So we want to develop this understanding that all phenomena are like dreams or illusions. The result of this practice, and again, it takes time. It's not one day, it's not 1 week, it's not 2 weeks. And also there is some kind of an hazard in these practices because you don't want to walk around in the world and going to, I don't know, if you have a family or going to work and then said, oh, you are a dream, or going into the street and there is a car or a truck going over and said, oh, this is an illusion. This is just a dream. You have to do it with a lot of support from a teacher. That's why, for example, Amelina doesn't give the working with perception outside of a retreat that she can monitor the people who are getting this retreat. Okay, so the results of this, this practice, again, few years of practice is that, but you don't do it thoroughly. You have to go in and out of this practice, otherwise you get crazy. I don't know if you know, but in psychology, one of the things that is defined people as crazy or needed to be hospitalized is that they don't have any, what is the words in English? Their perception is of the reality is either not existence or hallucination. So that's when we are hospitalized. So you need to know to go in and out these specific practices. You don't do that in a row or thoroughly. If you practice that according to the instructions of your teachers, so what will happen is that the level of attachment is something that you want, or aversion is something that you don't like, will reduce. And you will develop some kind of lucid awareness to reality. Because when you think about it and you know that and you understand that intellectually, you know that the reality is not what we see, right? That's the main basic of emptiness. But we don't live like that. So you start to live like that. And sometimes it's not that comfortable, especially if you have families, spouses, children, and stuff like that. As I said, there are some obstacles to this practice. You can either go and clinging into phenomena so you don't achieve that practice, or misunderstanding of emptiness, and then you fall into nihilism, which can be very easily also happen. So let's say that you already established a very strong inner heat practice, the Tumo practice. And let's say that you have started to develop some kind of illusory body understanding and getting in and out from that. It's not the next level, although sometimes that's how it goes in the way it's practiced, but sometimes it's parallel. You receive from your teacher teachings about dream yoga. Dream yoga is the third practices of the 6 yogas from the 6 yogas of Naropa. Of course, there are different types of dream yoga because there are different levels of dream yoga. But what we do in dream yoga, it's that those practices trains the practitioners to become lucid in their dreams. And like His Holiness liked to say, he said, why waste the sleeping time? I mean, if we sleep 1/3 of our life, so we are wasting 1/3 of the time that we will be able to practice. So not only becoming lucid in our dreams, but also to use the dream state for spiritual development. You can do a lot of practices in the dreams, but you have to be lucid first. So actually you continue to work, for example, on the illusory body during sleep. Okay, so you don't have to separate those two, but you have to gain some experiences in the illusory body in an awake state, and then you have to have experiences in dream yoga, and then you can combine those together. So let's assume that you already have them, okay? And again, you have to follow the instructor and you have to be guided by a living teacher, and I'll tell you why. For example, the first thing that those who are going into long retreat, solitary, silent long retreat, they know, for example, that if for 2 days in a row they cannot sleep, and that's a hazard from a lucid dreaming, for example, they need to go out immediately from the retreat. Otherwise, they'll get crazy, okay? And I've seen those, unfortunately. I can tell you that I had in such a situation, and after a while that I was doing dream yoga in and out, so one time I spoke with Lamalina and she said to me, no more dreaming yoga for you. Sorry, you can't do that, because I have a tendency to be lucid in a long period of time, and I'm not able to go to REM. REM is the REM sleeping that actually needed in order for us to keep our mind and body healthy. So I'm doing it in and out because I like this practice. But again, if I didn't have a living teacher that could tell me, and could see and understand my the symptoms that I had, I could get, very easily, I could get crazy and not be with you today. So let's assume that you already have the Tumo as a basic, and then you have the the Vajra body and the illusory body, and then you have the dream yoga. As you can see, you can follow those practices, although you don't practice one of them. Like, for example, I don't practice now dream yoga, but you can continue practices those. Then we are heading towards the pinnacle of the 6 yogas of Naropa, or the Tantra, okay? It's called the clear light yoga. Sometimes you might have heard the word Osel. Osel is the clear light yoga. So clear light yoga, actually, it's engaged, the practices is, the practitioner is engaging in what we call the luminous nature of mind. So, when you are receiving the 4 initiations of Dzogchen, for example, the inner mind Roshan, so you are introduced to your luminous nature of mind. But introducing to that, you can have a glimpse of, I don't know, a second or two. It doesn't mean that you hold it or you're being there for a long period of time. So the clear light yoga is practiced also during sleep or meditation. So you can see that even the clear light yoga, if you master that, you don't waste your sleep time. You can also practice that during the sleep. And the result of this practice is, I will say, the realization, the understanding, the insight of the non-dual nature of mind. Okay, which is some kind of a deep, deep inner peace and insight, and you cannot describe that in words. Okay, but also we can have some obstacles in this practice. Okay, we can grasp into those subtle experiences, like being stuck in those experiences, or, for example, sometimes we have a very calm mind, very peaceful mind, and we are mistaking that for a true realization. Okay, you probably heard Lama Lina when people are describing to her this kind of a very calm, very peaceful situation. She said, "Oh, you went to the God's realm. From there, the only way to go out from the God realms is drop into hell. Don't go there." So again, you need a teacher in order to see all those, all the symptoms, all the realization, all the things that you're describing, what you have or what you don't have, in order for them to see where you are and for you not to be mistaken, because most of us do not know to recognize where we are on the path. We need a teacher to do that. So after having the clear light yoga, or what we call the osel, actually this is the pinnacle, okay? From there are a few practices that are not in the 6 yogas of Naropa. There are 2 more practices that are considered to be there, but they are not building on top of that. They can be taught parallel, because what we have described until now, the 2 more, the illusory body, the dream yoga, and the clear light, mainly are being done during our lifetime. But if we didn't succeed to get into the luminous nature of mind, to the clear light mind, or Trekcho in Dzogchen, what we call, or Laktong sometimes in Mahamudra. So there are 2 more practices that can be done or can be taught in order to do them, but they are doing in what we call intermediate state, which is the bardo. Obviously, you don't do the bardo while you're alive, because bardo is happening in between the death and the rebirth after that, okay? I'm talking about the bardo of death, okay? I'm not talking about bardo of sleeping, bardo of living, or all those. I'm talking about the bardo yoga, which is the intermediate state, what we call bardo, which is between death and rebirth. And what you do in this, what you learn to do in this bardo yoga is that you learn to the visualizations and that will be happening in the bardo state. And it's very common to have all of them. Most of us are going through them, and it has nothing to do with culture. It has nothing to do with gender. Most of us going through them. So you become very familiar with the visualization, with the peaceful and wrathful deities you will be meeting there, and you know what to do. Okay, so when you practice the bardo yoga, actually what you do, you are preparing yourself to get into the luminous nature of mind after death. Okay, so it's some kind of contingency plan. Okay, sometimes some kind of a plan that you have, that you hope that you will not use, because you hope to get into enlightenment while you're still alive. Okay, Lama Lina gave an amazing teaching about the bardo yoga. And actually, she did also a retreat on the bardo yoga, and she will be doing that also in Yeah, it's going to be in the Netherlands now in this summer. So the Bharata Yoga, again, it's the fifth of the 6 yogas of Naropa. But again, it's not to achieve something during your life. It's more of achieving being able to achieve realization after your death. So it always comes with some kind of advice, okay? If you feel that if you're old or you feel that you don't have enough time in order to do that because you know that you are in a very beginning stage, you want to go to the Bharata yoga training, okay? Because you want to have this contingency plan. You want to have this tool in your box in order to use it after you're dying, okay? So the results, if we can call that a result after a death, is that you learn how to maintain your awareness after death, during the bardo, and then it increases the chances of liberation and a favorable rebirth. And I'm not sure if you know, but His Holiness the Dalai Lama is celebrating his 19th birthday now. While he's celebrating that now, everybody is looking forward to hear where and how and whom he's going to be in his rebirth. They're waiting to see if he's going to say anything about it now while he's 90. Now, can you imagine to yourself that if somebody like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, while he is alive, will be giving some kind of prophecy about that in the future, what will happen is that it's not only an awareness, it's a totally control, not only on the death process, but also where and when and how he will be born, okay? So it's a mastering in Vardha Yoga, right? Okay, so this is the fifth practices of the 6 yogas of Naropa. And let's assume that you don't know how to practice Bharata Yoga. You don't have the skills, you don't have the time that you spent on that practice. So you still have a chance to get into realization while, again, during the death. And this is the sixth practice of the 6 yogas of Naropas, which calls POA. Most of you have heard about that. POA is a transference of the consciousness or the mind. And what you do, it's a method to direct the consciousness at the moment of death to a pure land, okay? To a pure realm, to a pure land, like Dewa Chen. Most of the practitioners want to go to Dewa Chen. If you don't know what is Dewa Chen, I'm not gonna go into it now, but there are about 20 pure realms. If you want to transfer your current consciousness while dying into a pure realm, you want to learn which pure realm you want to be, okay? Because not all of them are the same. It's like, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Hawaii? You want to go to Italy? You want to go to, I don't know, Sudan or to Iraq, okay? Where do you want to go? Totally different country, right? So you want to learn about that, not only the practice of Pa, but to know what to practice there. And again, the result is to some kind of insurance in rebirth in a pure land. And that gives a lot of confidence while you're facing death. So as you could see, those 6 practices, there were 4 while we're doing that, while we're alive, in order to get into the realization, the luminous of the mind, okay? And then you have those 2 as a contingency plan in order to get results of some kind of liberation. It's not total liberation, okay? Although in the Bharata Yoga, if you are in a specific level, in the Bharata Yoga, there are 6 stages, five stages. If you are able to know how to control that on the first one, you can go being totally realized by that, but you have to master that. So those were the 6 yogas of Naropa. I hope that you're being, you have more information and more understanding about that before, even if you heard about them and you didn't know. So maybe I'll give you, I don't know, let's see, what do you think? Do you want the comparison? Because I see that it took us a little longer. We can go to the comparison between those 6 yogas of Naropa and Dzogchen practices if you're interested, or you want to be open to questions. So it's up to you. If you want a question, so raise your hand and we'll see how many hands we have here, or we'll go directly to the comparison between the 6 yogas and the Dzogchen. I think it's interesting, to see that. Okay, no hands. Good, good, good. So, as you know, so we have in Tantra, we have the generation stages. We have the sadhana, we go through stages. We learn how to generate ourselves as the deity or the archetype. And then when we have reached some kind of a level, the teacher is empowering us in order to practice those 6 yogas of Naropa. As you can see, he can empower us to see only one, for example, Tumu. And let's see, practice that for many years, and then we'll see if I will continue with you with others or you're going to stay there. It's not that somebody is going to give you all those 6 all together. It's very rare that somebody will give you all of them together. Usually they are done separately. In Dzogchen, as you know, what we have received is that we have received what called Rushen. Rushen is actually separate. The word Rushen in Tibetan is to separate. So what do you want to separate from what? I mean, separation is always has to have 2 components, right? You separate something from something, okay? You don't go and separate one thing from one thing, right? So usually we are doing those Rushens, which are some kind of preliminary practices in order to separate samsara from nirvana. Now that's very interesting because in Dzogchen we know that the phrase is samsara and nirvana are the same, right? So why do we want to separate samsara from nirvana? And it's interesting because what happens in those Rushens, it's that we learn to be in a specific mindset in order to understand the other mindset that we have. Now, we all are being in samsara all the time, right? So sometimes we are having glimpse to another state of mind. So we want to understand the differentiation between this specific mind and this specific mind, okay? They are not the same. The samsaric mind and the nirvanic mind or the enlightened mind are not the same, although they are both happening in the mind, right? So the Rushens are practices that we want to understand a specific level. Now, when we'll go on the equivalence of those practices between the Dzogchen and the 6 yogas, you will see that there are a lot of comparison, different practices for different students. So I also want to clarify that the Rushen practices of Dzogchen, they belong to a different, but it also complementary Tibetan Buddhist system. They're not the same systems. The 6 yogas of Naropa are a specific Buddhist Tibetan system, and the Dzogchen is a different Tibetan, okay? For example, Mahamudra is more related, for example, to the Tantra, to the Kagyu, and the Dzogchen is more related to the Nyingma, okay? So they have different purposes. On the path to enlightenment, they have different purposes. But what you can see, they have if you have a Russian of a specific practice in the Dzogchen, and you practice one of the 6 yogas of Naropa, you can have the same results. That's why I made the effort to give you the results of each one of the practices, not the signs, the results that we're looking for, okay? So those practices, they're overlapping in their purpose and maybe in some of the stages of the training of the mind, because we're training the mind of the subtle body again, but they're totally different practices. I want to make sure that although I will be doing the comparison, there are totally different stages. It's like, I don't know, if you want to go to New York and you take a train or you take a plane. It's not, it's a totally different method to go to New York, right? I'm not saying that this one is better than this one because some of the people cannot fly, for example. Some of the people cannot go on train, they have to walk. Okay, so it depends on the practitioner, and of course it depends on the level and the practice that they have. But both systems having the same purpose. It's to prepare the practitioner to recognize the nature of the mind. It doesn't matter if you go in this system or this system. The 6 yogas of Naropa or the Tantra, which is the generation stage and the completion stage practices, is more linear, is more methodical rather than the Dzogchen. You will see in a minute. But for different people, it's a different system. And it doesn't matter if this one works and this one works. In both of them, you'll get to New York. Okay, so don't feel like if you're not a Dzogchenpa or a Dzogchenma, it's a practitioner who practices Dzogchen, don't feel discouraged because you're practicing Tantra. You will get to New York, don't worry, okay? Just practice. So as we said before, the 6 yogas of Naropa, it's a set of very advanced, okay, they're not common, they're very advanced completion stage tantric practices. And it's we emphasize there the control of the subtle body, which is the channels, the winds, the drop, as we know, in order to experience the ultimate reality and to achieve enlightenment, okay? So again, set of advanced completion stage practices. The Russians, it's a preliminary Dzogchen practices that separate samsaric appearances from what we call rikpa or trekcha or nature of mind. And usually those Russians are practiced before what we call in the Dzogchen, it's either Togyal or Trekcha. Okay, I'm saying either Togyal or Trekcha because, again, there are students who can practice Togyal immediately and people who are still practicing Trekcha and will take them time, okay? So let's go for the comparison. So in the 6 yogas of Naropa, the first one, as we say, it's the inner heat yoga, it's the Tumo. The Dzogchen comparison, it's the body Rushin, okay? Both are working directly with the subtle body channels, energy and winds and breath, okay? Although in the body Rushin, all of you that have been doing the retreat of inner body Rushin knows exactly what will happen when they are practicing the practice. I will not say how you practice that. When you practice that, it has a lot of effect on your body. Again, open up the channels. If you're working, sometimes you work with the breathing, and sometimes it depends on the teacher, you don't work with the breathing. Sometimes you work with a gesture, and sometimes you don't, okay? What, like the Vajra pose or something like that. So this is the Tumo, okay? Tumo, equivalent is body Rushin, inner body Rushin. Then we go to the second one, the illusory body yoga, okay? And it's the inner mind Rushin. Again, both of them are training the practitioner to see phenomena as empty and like a dream, okay? Because we don't believe that the external reality as a real one anymore after being practicing the mind roshan. And then we have the dream yoga. So in the dream yoga, there is something very interesting. It's also the mind roshan, but also the sound roshan. I know that Lama Lena is doing the sound Roshan differently. I have received that from one of my lamas, the sound Roshan differently from what Lama Lena is doing. So I don't want to confuse them. But both use to actually to alter states like dreams or sound, and to start to investigate the nature of perceptions. I don't know if you remember, perception is thoughts, feelings, uh, uh, reactions to those feelings. So this is some kind of clutter that we all call that perception. Then we have the fourth one, the clear light yoga. And the clear light yoga is what leads in Dzogchen to the Rigpa recognition. We do it with the Rushan of the perception, the perception Rushan, which is to find out that everything is illusion on one hand. On the other hand, we have glimpse to recognize Rekcho or to Tawa, Rigpa, whatever the name you want to call it. So again, it's not one-on-one exactly, but if you see what are the purpose of each one of them, you can see how it goes there. And then we go to Barda Yoga. Barda Yoga, usually it's Barda Yoga. I mean, even in Dzogchen, it's the same practice. There is no specific Dzogchen practice for Barda Yoga. But again, it's a preparation for the post-death states, okay? You want to be familiar with that. And then when we go to Poa, again, in the Dzogchen practices, usually Dzogchen do not practice Poa, okay? That's why you don't see Dzogchen teachers who practice Poa, because transferring the consciousness is skipping the bardo state of death to rebirth. And for Dzogchenpa, this is a great opportunity if he or she didn't realize enlightenment during life. Bardo is much more the right practice rather than go and do the transfer of consciousness. So again, those are different methodologies, but they have a lot in common, and you can go through that or you can go through that. And usually what happens, it's that advanced practitioners, especially those that are being practiced both Kagyu and Nigma, those lineages, they may use, for example, the 6 yogas of Naropa as a preparation to supportive practices of Dzogchen. And then when they are coming to Dzogchen, for example, for the 4 initiations of Dzogchen, they are ready, okay? Because they have been practiced Tumo, so Tumo clears the channels for better stability of Tawa, okay? That happens. It's not because you stabilize the Tawa, okay? Or for example, the dream yoga or the illusory body yoga, if they are practicing that, so when they come to Dzogchen, the attachment to appearances is lessened, so it's much easier for them to dive into Trekcho and to be in Trekcho right away. So it's not a waste of time in doing that if you're on one hand, and on the other hand, if you have been practicing Dzogchen for a while and you feel that you didn't get whatever is their goal to Tantra, start with generation stage, to go to completion stages, and then practice that. And then that prepares you also to Dzogchen, okay? And of course, follow the teacher instructions. Okay, so although we are more of the time, I think that for me, it's always, I always had this question, what is the comparison and why is that and what is that and what is Russian like that and why is that? So I hope it's helped. And if somebody has a question about that, so please don't hesitate to ask now. Yes, Lilith.
So you said you were talking about signs, and this is something that is like one of those always moving, what signs are even worth reporting, especially when somebody has a lot of physical symptoms, or, can you give some advice on what types what types of things should I be telling my teacher, as far as practice goes? Especially when you look at Lama Lena, who's always like, that's just a nyam. You know what I mean? And you don't
But
know, because
yes,
she's
but
always
chance,
thinking about it. She's always keeping track,
yes. Well, she's a
but
Chokchanpa, so
yeah.
she is following the
Mhm.
line. This is Nyam, just for us to remind ourselves. But in many cases, if you have noticed, because you've been in many of her classes and many of her Zooms, so when people are describing their Nyams, in some cases, she continues to ask questions. And those people are describing whatever they're describing to her. And she doesn't say, oh, that's a Nyam. She says, you're in the right track. Continue, right?
Mm.
Um, so their signs, what they have been described, when she asked them the questions, you can see by their answers if they have the signs or not. The signs not necessarily something that you just describe. Okay, it's not just, oh, I saw a bright light. Okay, a bright light usually tells you, oh, your eyes got very dried. People are thinking the bright light is something amazing because they haven't said, oh, you're dried. You just you have to drink a lot of water now. Okay, but usually the signs are not, it has nothing to do with something that has some visualizations. Unless again, for example, if she describes the Rika or Tiglet, she always goes there. What happens? Did you see? Did they move? They did not move. So she see some kind of sign, but only with regard to Togyal, and nothing that has to do with the Tawa practices or others. But I cannot talk about the science. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Because it's always something, because my personal experience is, I'm a very powerful dreamer. I've been practicing dream yoga for a long time. So I get a lot of visions and dreams and, powerful symbols and all this. And so for me, it's always like, okay, well, what is actually something that I have doubt about? And
But
what is
did,
something
but
that
did
just
you,
seems cool?
yeah, but Lily, did you have this, did you, again, uh, um, in the dream yoga practices,
Sure.
have you noticed what, um, what you ask you or others when they describe their dreams? That
Yeah.
always the
Yeah.
questions goes, what does it mean to you?
Yeah. So I guess the difference is, at what level does this experience hit you? At what level does it feel like it's shifted things? If
I
something feels
think you
really,
know. I think you'll
yeah,
know. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
know.
Okay.
I think you'll know, and not only you'll know,
Yeah.
I think that when you hit some kind of a sign, although it can be a yam, by the way, it's not a bad thing. Although she always goes, oh, that's a nice yam. It's not a bad thing because experience, like, for example, inner heat, you don't go all the time with the inner heat, right? With the tumor inside of you. But in inner heat, it's a very good sign if you have this, if you've been able to do that. But it's only the beginning of tumor, because when you go with the red drop up, with the white drop down, and then you combine them, and then you do that, and then you do that, and you visualize that, and then that, something else happens. It's not about the heat. The heat
Mm-hmm.
is a tool to create some kind of breakthrough to a deeper level of of uh, uh, of luminous mind realization.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
heat is only a method, okay? It's, if you get stuck, by the way, some people get stuck in the tumor. People who got stuck in the tumor, what happens is that they got stuck in the blissful energy. They don't continue. And they
Mm-hmm.
need a teacher to kick their asses out of this situation, tell them, okay, guys, live it up. You don't go there. And by the way, if you've noticed in the 6 yogas of Naropa, I never mentioned the Karma Mudra, which is part of somewhere there,
Mm-hmm.
because this is so rare to achieve the same level by Karma Mudra, okay? Everybody is interested in Karma Mudra. People thinking it's sex, but it's not sex, okay? It's
Mm-hmm.
far away from sex,
Yeah.
but the same purpose. That's why I told you about the purpose of this each one of those practices, because if you can reach that in a different level, you don't have to go and to find the right concert, and then to train the concert in 20 years, and then go there in and out, and do whatever is needed in order to do some kind of I don't know, acrobatic situation in order to uh,
Yeah.
one of my teachers at the beginning, they described the karma mudra. They said it's actually being it's a plumbing. Okay, it's a plumbing. If you want to be a plumber, go to karma mudra. I don't want to go into details about that, but
It, I get
so
it.
actually, what happens it's that when you do that, when you do the practice, you know when you hit a place which is no longer just a bliss or just a hit or just an amazing experience, either of clarity or peaceful or something like that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you'll
So I
know.
yeah, and so I guess because I'm also kind of like asking because a lot of people, it's like, and so I guess really it also takes knowing yourself and knowing what practice you're actually doing and knowing why you're doing the practice and where you're headed, helps you determine what's significant there, because if you, so say in this example, just because you had a lovely encounter with a person one night doesn't mean you necessarily accomplished
Yeah,
something, you
yes,
know.
exactly. So I guess,
Knowing what you're doing is part of knowing what's significant in that way.
yeah. And I guess that the most important thing is to know, especially for a Westerner mind, for us, okay, is I like to see the broad picture, and I like to know the purpose. That's why I gave you the information about what is the purpose of each one of those practices and what is the results of those practices, not the science, the results that we want to aim while we are practicing them. And if you're practicing, for example, Amelina is doing in Germany, the working with perception retreat, and you go there and you don't know that you want to break, to separate, again, it's a Russian, right? It's a Dzogchen, it's a Russian, to separate between samsara and nirvana, and you want to be in the illusory state of mind to uh, to capture all things as illusory or as a dream, and it's going to frighten you, don't go there. Don't go there. I remember when the first time I did this Roshan with Lama Lina, it was a few years ago. It was during the COVID, so she, compassionately did it on Zoom. And my husband was at home, and I was going all over, it was a silent retreat, so I didn't talk, but I was talking to myself, everything is a dream, everything is illusory, everything. He thought that I'm crazy. He thought that I lost my mind. He told me that afterwards, that he thought that I lost my mind, because you have to play with that. Otherwise, don't practice that.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody from external who doesn't do those practices, it might look like you lost your mind. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
That's why she always says, when you're doing the perception retreat, the Russian, so don't operate heavy machinery, don't drive, don't go out. You have to practice it, because you can go with this electricity and just, cutting people around because you don't feel that they're alive or they're true.
Yeah.
So I hope I answered your question. Is there anybody else who wants to answer a question? No. So since it's our last time before we're gonna meet again for the talk teaching, so I want to thank you all for participating in this class. I hope you had some information that helps you in whatever you're doing. Thank you so much. For me, it was a pleasure going over those those classes that I did so many years ago. It was nice, going back to there and remind myself again why I'm here, why I'm in this world, why I'm doing what I'm doing. So thank you. I really very grateful for each one of you for allowing me to do that, and also, of course, to my Lama, which is amazing. So thank you so much. Let's dedicate. Last time I did our dedication really helped. Do you remember what was the dedication? Let's stop the war around the world. And the following day, there was a ceasefire in Israel. So I hope that it will be also around the world again. Wherever there is a war, let's hope that's our dedication, that all wars will be stopped and all people will be stabilized in their life in order to practice and in order to get enlightened. Whatever they're practicing, they don't need to practice Buddhism. They can practice whatever is feasible to them. So I hope that our wishes will come true, because we're all in this together. So thank you so much, guys. So we'll send you an email and we'll put on the Vajra World group. If you're not there, you can join the WhatsApp group, and we'll let you know when will be the teachings, and we'll celebrate together the talk, okay? So I'll let you know before I go to Europe when it will be happening. Thank you. Thank you, guys.